So, dear friends, a few years ago in my community there was a Korean seminarian who went on to become a priest, and he was very, very funny in a very subtle way, but just if ever he was accused of something, or if ever he was asked to do something that, or in some way it was implied that he might have gotten something wrong, he would do this pose, a pose which we had often seen in many of these little prayer cards that you see around the place, so we'd say, "Don't you, did you forget to, wash the floor?" And he'd go, "Ah," right? Because in so many prayer cards for saints, they always have this kind of pose with weird kind of fingers and kind of looking aloft into the heavens, And it gives this idea of saints that they're, well, from a fellow's perspective, that they're fairly effeminate, if I'm honest. Even St. Joseph, you know what I mean? St. Joseph. I mean, it's just all a bit effeminate. And for this reason, the saint of today can sometimes be disregarded. St. Therese of Lisieux. It can sound, a lot of what obviously she's French, so when she writes, it's very kind of poetic and very French. And it can all sound a bit sentimental. So we have to be careful when we read St. Therese of Lisieux, she is young. She died at the age of 24, and a lot of the experiences that we speak about happened to her while she was still a teenager. So she was a child for much of the growing part of her sanctity, if you will. So we have to kind of understand that the way she writes and the way she speaks is like that of a child. But it doesn't mean that we as adults or we as men have nothing to learn from her. So, okay, that's a little bit of a preamble, a bit of a preface before we start into what we can learn from her today. So, she's born in 1873. Good way to remember that is that 6 years before the apparitions in Knock. Right, so she's born before Knock in 1873 to a relatively rich family, and she was a little princess. She absolutely loved being spoiled and loved her curly hair and prancing around the place, and she had older sisters who did all the work, and she would do the minimum possible, and if ever she was given out to, she would bawl. She would just cry, and then she'd cry because she was crying, and she was just an emotional time bomb. Like, you just never knew what was going to set her off, and when she got set off, that was it. Here we go, eruptions again. I think we all know people like that. So yeah, just unable to control her emotions. She had some tragic experiences in her youth. When she was only 4.5 years of age, her mother died of breast cancer. So then her oldest sister, Pauline, became effectively her new mother, her second mom. But then Pauline subsequently went and joined the Carmelite sisters. So now, not only was Pauline gone from the home, it felt like she had lost a mother again. Again, St. Therese of Lisieux, or Thérèse, was profoundly sensitive. So all of these things would have wounded her and maybe reopened that wound of loss that she had towards her mother. She became seriously ill thereafter, developed a fever, and people thought she was dying. During that experience of profound illness, where it looked like she could die, by the way, her parents had 9 children, but only 5 survived into adulthood. So, like, people dying at a young age was common. So, they thought she may have been dying. During this experience of profound illness and possibly in danger of losing her life, a statue of Our Lady that she saw came to life. She saw Our Lady, who smiled at her, and after which the fever left her. She didn't actually speak very much about this. She did mention to one of her sisters, but never went into much detail. But it was an experience that changed her. There's still more to go, though. And this just reminds me of today's gospel, where the Lord says, "I tell you," so when the apostles ask him, "Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Jesus responds, he brings a little child to him, and he says, "I tell you solemnly, unless you change and become like little children, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven." He doesn't just say, unless you become like a little child. He says, unless you change. Now, for us adults, the older we get, the harder it is to change our habits. the harder it is to change. And that change in Greek is the word metanoia. It's the word for conversion. So changing, converting is harder when you get older, because we get more set in our ways. We get more stubborn. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way I'm going to do it. And so changing, converting is harder as we get older. That's why childlikeness is such a virtue, because children, they learn to change very quickly. They adapt very quickly because they constantly have to. They're going from different teachers, different schools, from home to school, and then they're learning new experiences all the time, starting in new sports, new clubs, new people. So children learn to change very quickly. That starts to plateau, I suppose, probably in late 20s. And once you hit your 30s, you start getting stubborn. Once you hit 40, Janie, lads, 'tis all downhill. 'Tis all downhill from there. So this is an experience that St. Therese never had. She never got as far as 40. So she had this profound experience then of seeing Our Lady, which brought her health back, good. But there was still a change of heart that was needed. She still had uncontrolled emotions. And in France at the time, around Christmas time, it was normal for people for the family to leave their shoes by the fire, probably to dry out in the winter. And then the parents would put little gifts into the shoes. Sounds kind of gross, actually, into your boots. You know, would you want sweets left in your boots? I don't think so. Chocolates, imagine. But anyway, this was the habit. This was the custom at the time. So Therese's boots were left by the fire, and her dad was coming along to put in gifts into her boots. And normally kids grew out of this kind of thing. And so he was getting a bit exacerbated by this whole thing. So Jenny, he says, is this the last year now we'll have to do this for Therese? Now, Therese was on the way up the stairs, and she heard the comment. And her sister looked at her, expecting fireworks, right? Expecting her to, here we go again. Oh, poor me, right? And the sister stares at her, and Therese has this change of heart. She had been praying for this change of heart. She wanted to change. She didn't want to be so emotional all the time. And she was praying to the Lord for this conversion, this change of heart, this healing of her heart, that she could just regulate her emotions and not be dominated by them. And so, rather than exploding into floods of tears and then crying because she had cried, she ran downstairs and gave her dad a big hug. And everyone had been bracing themselves for this explosion, which never came. And this is the change of heart. So even though she was young and relatively small, this is what the Lord is talking about here. He's not talking about be childish. Being childish is throwing a tantrum when you don't get what you want. That's what she had been. She had been quite childish, but now she became childlike. Childlike is mature. Childlike is being able to control your emotions and recognizing that you don't get pulled every direction just because you feel something. We also have to consider other people's emotions, other people's needs, what the Lord wants, what the Lord is asking of us, what obedience requires of me. You know, childishness is, I want. Childlikeness is, Lord, whatever you want. I will change according to what you need. So, she wanted to enter religious life at the age of 13, which is quite young. And so she asked the Carmelite superior, who said no. And then she said, okay, I'll talk to the bishop. So she spoke to the bishop, and the bishop said no. So she went above his head as well and said, I'm going to talk to the Pope. So herself and her dad were going on a pilgrimage to Rome, and because she was small and she probably looked a lot younger than she actually was, she'd scoot in under various barriers and touch various relics and go all sorts of places she wasn't supposed to go at all. But she did. I mean, she had a strong will, that girl. She had a strong will. And she gets to the Pope, she gets near the Pope, and usually, this is Pope Leo the 13th, you wouldn't actually approach the Pope. You know, the Pope he was probably sitting, and people would walk past. And even those dignitaries who could approach, I mean, there would have been, maybe a ring kiss, and that would have been it. Like, you didn't stop and have the chats. What does she do? Scoots under the barrier, goes straight up to them. I want to be a nun. I mean, like, this is, she could have been, not arrested, but it wasn't done. This wasn't the way you approach the Pope. And she was 14 at the time. So she wanted to enter when she was 14, enter the Carmelite order where Pauline, her sister, had gone. One of the Pope's assistants there, who saw this act of courage and the strength of her will, managed to put in a good word for her and made it possible for her to enter religious life even at such a young age. And so she did, into the convent at 14. She was small in stature. She was pleasant. She had a likable personality. But she had something else. There was a depth of spirit there as well. Again, we have to try and get away from this kind of effeminate, sentimental kind of faith that she had. What she does here, this is manly. This is difficult. This is difficult, overcoming your own will. So she wanted to become not just a saint, but a great saint. Keep in mind, she's younger than all of you here. She was so 14, 15-ish, 14 when she started. So, and at that age, she decided, I want to be a great saint, but how am I going to do that? She never left the convent. She never did a missionary trip. She never wrote a book in order to have it published then. She wrote her experience as a diary, more or less, for herself, which became published afterwards, A Story of a Soul. But she wasn't writing this because she thought she was so amazing, writing it, this is my autobiography so that all of you, my fans, can discover my deep sanctity. She wasn't writing it for people out there at all. She was writing these experiences for herself. And yet, she would become so famous worldwide afterwards. Why? She said, love proves itself by deeds. So how am I to show my love? Great deeds are forbidden me. The only way I can prove my love is by scattering flowers, and these flowers are every little sacrifice, every glance and word, and the doing of the least actions out of love. So she took every sacrifice, every chance to make sacrifices that she could. So no one knew what she liked or what she didn't like, because she would just, if she was offered food she didn't like, she'd say thank you. Garlic bread, no problem at all. And she would receive whatever food and eat it graciously. So often, so much so, that she was often given the last portions or the leftovers or the burnt bits. Thank you very much, no problem. Enchanté. And she'd eat away, no problem. People did not know what she liked or what she didn't like. I mean, you might think that, so what? There were people who were martyred. Agreed. But these are just the little sacrifices of every day. Stop making yourself the centre of the universe. You'll be fine. There's a bit of black, burnt stuff on it. You'll be okay. All right? Get over yourself. Out of love. Out of love. Lord, this toast is burnt. Scratch, scratch, scratch. We're done. Okay? Little act out of love. It's the simple, ordinary things. This is how she lived her sanctity. She smiled at sisters who she found difficult. And there was one particular sister, I don't remember her name, sisters probably do, who was very, very challenging. She was Anastasia, was it Anastasia or something? I can't remember her name. She was a very, very challenging, she was kind of an old, cranky old sister, just not very nice at all. No matter what you did for her, it wasn't good enough. The tea was too hot, the tea was too cold, the food was never right, the tray wasn't arranged correctly. And whatever the sister would say to her, St. Therese would go, yes, sister, whatever you want, sister. 3 bags full, sister. And do whatever she wanted. So much so that at one point this cranky sister said to her, you seem to really like me. What do you like about me? And St. Therese said, if you only knew. If you only knew. She said, oh, sure, look it. If she was Irish, she would have said, oh, sure, look it. But she didn't say that because she was French. She would have said, ooh la la, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, but this was it. People did not know. If she found them challenging, she was so loving towards them, people didn't even know that they were difficult for her. Again, what is this? Again, we have people who went across the world doing amazing missionary trips and risking their lives and being imprisoned and flogged and scourged. This seems like something very small in comparison. But what's that expression? There's a tendency within all of us to be a hero out there and a zero at home. We can be firemen, putting out fires, saving cats, saving buildings, the whole lot out there, and then you come home and you won't even make a cup of tea for your wife. It's this sort of thing. We're not called to be just heroes out there and zeros at home, but called to live the little way of love. Whatever is asked of me, wherever it is asked, change and become like a little child and serve. So she wrote, I have always wanted to become a saint. Unfortunately, when I've compared myself with the saints, I've always found that there is the same difference between the saints and me as there is between a mountain whose summit is lost in the clouds and a humble grain of sand trodden underfoot by passers-by. But instead of being discouraged, I told myself God would not make me wish for something impossible. And so, in spite of my littleness, I can aim at being a saint. It is impossible for me to grow bigger, so I put up with myself as I am. This is a good expression. I put up with myself as I... Welcome to my world. I put up with myself as I am. Like, we have to just deal with the way we are and our tempers and all the rest. I have to put up with myself as I am and my countless faults. But I will look for some means of going to heaven by a little way, which is very short and very straight. A little way that is quite new. We live in an age of inventions. We need no longer climb laboriously up flights of stairs. The escalator was a new invention. It had been unveiled in the French Exposé. There was a big convention of all new inventions, and one of them was the escalator. People used to pay money just to go up. I think it was like a 6-foot elevator. Just they'd pay money. So this was a new thing. It was starting to come into buildings and hotels and all sorts of snobby places. So escalator. Wow. So escalator. So this is what she's talking about here. We need no longer climb laboriously up flights of stairs in well-to-do houses. There are lifts. And I was well determined to find a lift to carry me to Jesus, for I was far too small to climb the steep stairs of perfection. So I sought in Holy Scripture some idea of what this life I wanted would be. And I read these words: whoever is a little child, come to me. It is your arms, Jesus, that are the lift to carry me to heaven. And so there is no need for me to grow up. I must stay little and become less and less. This is the little way of St. Therese of Lisieux. It's not by doing great actions, but by doing little actions with great love. And what's so revolutionary about that is this is something that anybody can do. If we read stories of saints who were martyrs or missionaries abroad, you think that's what's wonderful. I'll never be able to do that. I'm not going to China as a missionary. I have a family, or I have a parish, or I have whatever it is. But the little way of love is something that anybody can do, because it means your day, going to school, parking the car, washing the car, peeling potatoes, making a meal, hoovering a floor, can all be done out of love. The ordinary things out of great love. And that's where sanctity is found, in doing the ordinary things with extraordinary love. So we ask the Lord today for that grace, as he asks us to change, to be able to change our way of doing things, that we can become like a little child in his sight. Not childish, but childlike. For I tell you solemnly, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. And so the one who makes himself as little as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Amen.